All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We have a couple of replacements today. Representative Goley is sitting in for Representative Leishman, and Brian Rill is being replaced by John McAllister. Thank you. And I think everyone else is here. Nope, there's Representative Wilhelm. Okay. We have some information on the retirement system from the retirement system and from the Retirement Security Coalition, which is the professional firefighters and others. So we'll add that to your reading list. And I apologize to everyone for not being able to be here last week. My dentist would not let me go. And so I hope to get to know most of you better. For the agenda, we need to continue the organization by electing a vice chair and a clerk. And so I'm accepting nominations for vice chair. Senator Bradley.
I would nominate my colleague on the left, Senator Gray.
Second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Doesn't look like it. In that case, thank you very much, Vice Chair Gray. I would like to appoint Brian Rill as clerk. I've spoken to him and he's agreed to it, and his Mr. McCullough will be taking notes for this meeting. The draft minutes from the previous meeting are being posted on the committee website, which are public. Once we approve them, the draft notice will be taken off. And I'll try to get the minutes posted after every meeting so that they can be read and approved. All right. We don't have a very long agenda, but I would like to make sure that we schedule further meetings, because due to the legislative scheduling system, it is much easier to cancel or change a meeting than it is to create one. So I'd like to suggest that we schedule a meeting every week, Thursday afternoon, unless there is a lot of opposition to that time and date. Senator Soucy, you look concerned?
No, I thought Senator Bradley had his microphone on.
Oh, that's okay. Senator, did you wish to comment or? Nope, okay. All right, then, we'll, sounds like there is no great objection, so I'll do that. Thursday at 1, probably here. And that will, the reason for the regular meetings is that we have a very wide-ranging charge here, and we'll need some time to figure out exactly how to tackle it. Not just, what are we going to do, but how are we going to do it? And we have a report due on December 1st, which will just barely let us get some legislation in for this coming year. I know that in the House, committees and commissions can go to the Rules Committee and get late introduced bills, and that's probably what we're going to have to do. So, any other comments? Okay. In that case, we're down to the important stuff, the discussion. And does anyone have a comment or a concern or a topic that I think we need to bring to the commission? Senator Bradley?
So, when we debated this provision in the budget, in June, um, Senator Susi brought forward an amendment that I think is substantially similar to what I am, going to at least throw out there. And the reason for, putting something out there, and I have two different versions of it. This is the first version that's being circulated, and there should be enough copies for members of the public. I think it's vitally important that we have, thank you, that we actually have accurate information. When the Senate heard the provision that the House passed over to us in the budget, it came to us as 10 years, $25 million a year, but there were actuarial analysis that said if we pre-funded everything, which is what we did in 2022 with House Bill 1587, it was $134 million. And I would prefer to do something like that so that there's no implication that the state is going to pass the cost of any new benefit back to the counties or the municipalities. I think we would have to discuss what the ongoing costs for the municipalities if we get that far. But in any case, what you have in front of you is a version of Senator Susi's amendment, which only increases the multiplier to 2.5% for those individuals, and I believe there are 1,824 of them, that had been hired as Group 2 employees prior to July 1 of 2011. I think we need to get that costed out. The one change, I think, from Senator Susi's amendment is I did not change the existing retirement date as some of the other versions have done, so that we have an analysis of what keeping the current 25 years of service and 50-year age of retirement in place. I think that should be costed out. That was the more or less what Senator Susi introduced, with the exception of the dates for the retirement of 25 years of service and 50 years of age, as I recall from the debate that we had on the floor in the Senate in the budget, which the Senate did not vote for it, but I think there was some indication that we should examine it. So that is what I would like to put out there for discussion. Now, the policy of the New Hampshire retirement system and the Department of Administrative Services is that without a actual bill, they can't go to the actuaries, GRS, and ask for an actuarial analysis. And I think if we're going to commit to the kind of resources that are at stake here, we need good numbers. I've spoken with the speaker. We've spoken to our chiefs of staff. The two of us have the authority to utilize consultant monies in both the House and the Senate discretionary funds, and we've spoken about, Speaker Packard and I have spoken about using that. From my point of view, I am more than happy to entertain that. I think we should do that, because I think that waiting until January for a bill with an actuarial analysis is, it just defeats the purpose of what this commission should be about, which is collecting information and making proposals. Marty Carlin, who couldn't be here today, but folks from the retirement system are here, has told me that the cost of an analysis like that is in the upper range of about $5,000. So I think it's something that is, certainly something that we can afford to do and should do. So that is version number 1. Version number
Okay.
2, which,
Senator, I think that we should see if there are any comments on this.
okay, fine.
From other people before we look at other suggestions. But I strongly agree that once the commission agrees that something is worth analyzing, we should get the actuarial analysis. $5,000 or $10,000 is well worth the effort. All right, so does anyone have a comment on this change? This is only for Group 2 who were employed but not vested in 2011.
Madam
Yes.
Chair,
Yes,
I would just like to agree 100% with Senator Bradley. And as he said, we have talked about this. And, I think the biggest problem that we had with Senator Soucy's amendment at the last minute was we really didn't have any numbers. And I'm not sure how we're going to effectively move forward without the numbers. And I'm sitting here today saying, I want to fix this thing once and for all. So whatever we need, I hope that we can attain so that we can do the job and do it right the first time.
okay, thank you. Somebody must have, yes, Mr. McCullough,
McAllister, thank you, Chairman.
McAllister.
That's okay. Is it possible as well to look into the numbers and see if we can run the numbers for increasing the multiplier for all members, including the ones that had come in after 2011?
That's a suggestion.
I think it's important to look at those numbers as well, since one of the topics that we have been talking about for many years now is the recruitment as well as retaining members in the fire service, as well as police and Group 2 members.
All right. Bradley, you have a comment on that?
I mean, we certainly could look at it. I think that all of the bills that were introduced, as I understood them, dealt with the 1,824 people that were hired prior to July of 2011. So expanding it, I think, while I understand that a lot of people would like to do that, and it may be a retention benefit, I suspect the price tag is extremely high, and you will be potentially pitting Group 2 against Group 1, and we're suddenly into, a blockbuster spending initiative. I think that the focus, at least in my opinion, would be much better on the 1,824 individuals that had been hired prior to January of 11. But if the committee wants to, have that analysis done, I think that's not necessarily a bad number to have, but I doubt very much that I would find the ability to be able to support that. So I'm just being upfront about it right now.
Okay. And actually, I believe it's down to 1,730 individuals. But anyway, Senator Gray?
Certainly, the discussions that we had during the budget negotiations covered a lot of different things in the retirement system. And certainly, retention is one of the things that we looked at. The proposal that we received from the House, I don't believe did the right things in retention because it actually made it easier for people to retire earlier. And went back and did all the retroactive things. So for the bulk of the employees covered in Group 2, they weren't mentioned, they weren't addressed, and therefore it had no impact on them. One of the things I did ask the retirement system to do is to look at a plan that would, at either 20 years or 30 years or whatever, increase slightly the multiplier for all employees so that people, even in the affected individuals, the 1,824, if you weren't up at least a 2.25, that at 20 years you would go to 2.25, and then at say 30 years you would go to a 2.5. And if that were for all employees, then certainly that could help the retention of your employees, and it would help to reduce the cost impact because the non-retroactivity, okay, means that I don't have to go pay for the reductions that we did before. The other thing that I did talk to people in administrative services about would affect, in my opinion, both Group 1 and Group 2, and that would be allowing for a matching of contributions to the 401, 403, thrift savings, whatever you want to call it. But that would be a negotiated benefit so that if organization came in and said, well, yeah, we're ready to negotiate our new contract and we would like 5%, 2% in match and 3% in wages, that would be a possibility up to whatever limit that we set. And that would be outside of the retirement system itself, but still in keeping with a lot of the retirement plans that are out there. Right now, I've looked at COLAs, I've looked at other things, and certainly in my opinion, it gets to be too expensive very quickly. So certainly interested in the numbers coming out on a lot of this stuff, but like I say, a match for the employees who are making contributions to some kind of a retirement plan, is something that would only affect the state employees on our dime. It would be a negotiated thing with the people who are employed by the localities. They would be responsible for theirs just as they are other benefits. So there's a lot of issues out there, and certainly Senator Bradley has given us one so far. He's got more, but there's a lot of things out there. But to get this through the Senate, it has to be affordable and it has to be sustainable. Okay, those are the keys that I see on getting a good vote in whatever we come up with in the Senate. Thank
Okay.
you.
Senator Susie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple things. One, actually is a question for Senator Bradley. I'm looking at the amendment that you distributed, which is in part similar to the amendment that I had submitted at the end of the budget process. But I noticed that you've taken out the provisions relative to disability retirement. And I'm wondering if that was intentional or not, because that was part of the amendment that I introduced. It's also part of Representative Goley's bill that we would be amending.
I'm not sure I can answer that question right now. I intended the amendment to be comprehensive, so if that
If you want it
evidently is
comprehensive,
not in
needs
there, it
to
probably
address-
should be.
It needs to address disability.
Okay, and then if I may further,
Please.
I just wanted to agree with Mr. McAllister that if we're going to entertain the proposal, I think it makes good sense in terms of utilizing our resources to make an ask that looks at a broader array of numbers. Now, I agree, that's not necessarily where we'll end up, but I think having the information will help guide our decision-making more quickly. And then I do hope that given as the chair identified, sort of the broad swath of responsibility, that we would also be looking at other things such as a COLA that would impact, a sustainable COLA that would impact both groups that are in the system. I think that would probably be the next topic I hope we could address. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I'd like to say that this amendment and the other amendment I believe Senator Bradley is bringing forth is a short-term fix to deal with some of the issues that were created by the severe problems we had in 2011. This is a focused change, and it really only affects a small group. I'd like to spend the next meeting essentially looking at what kind of changes we might consider to the retirement system in the longer term, and also how would we, what priorities would we have? What would be our emphasis, and how would we decide if it's a good change or a bad change? Mostly brainstorming, but I think we need to do that. There are so many choices and so many options, and the retirement system has so many moving parts. We need to narrow it down a little. So, anyone else have a comment on this amendment? Senator Waters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just in a sense to, I want to thank Senator Bradley for bringing this forward, and Senator Susi for the framework that she provided for it. And my feeling in lines with what you just said, Madam Chair, is that I would hope that we could focus on two things. I think we ought to focus on what we might potentially bring forward in the framework of what Senator Bradley has given us for a bill that potentially could be done on veto day. I think we also then, as you suggested, the next meeting, look at the broader context, the larger issue of the multipliers, the COLAs. I have some ideas about doing an opt-out instead of an opt-in on the additional 401 programs, which, as you recall, Madam Chair, we discussed in the Decennial Pension Commission and those other things. And I think that, I think there is a bifurcation about there, what we might potentially be able to do on veto day, and then what we might recommend as bills will be introduced in the regular session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we've heard from all the senators. Does anyone else have a comment, please? Okay.
All the senatorial oars were in the water.
Yes, and this is not just a legislative commission, so I'm hoping that we had some other comments about this plan. I have one, and that's when we were considering changes this year, one issue that kept coming up primarily with corrections, but also with other group 2, is the years of service was an issue. Massachusetts still has 20 years for 50% pay, and working an extra 4 years is a major issue for some people. And I don't know if that's in your other plan, Senator Bradley, but I think it's an issue. Mr. McAllister, you got a comment, or?
No, I don't have a comment on that, but are we still brainstorming here?
Okay. Anyone else? Well, in that case, Senator, your other plan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This version is slightly different than the previous version, and I think it is something that should also be looked at in terms of the actuaries. It for anybody with less than 5 years of service, the multiplier of 2.1 and 2.2 would go to 2.25. So it is obviously meant to have less of a cost, which I think gets me to one of the big picture items that, this commission and everybody that's on any of the finance committees in the House and Senate is going to have to deal with as we consider what we might do in terms of retirement. those of us that are on the fiscal committee heard a pretty compelling testimony from the administrator of the Sununu Center lawsuits that are ongoing. And as all of us that are legislators know, Karen Umberger's bill that passed dedicated $100 million to settling those claims. And I think certainly Justice Broderick has indicated that he feels that is going to be too low. So that is a big picture item that, as we think about what we're going to do here, how we're going to pay for it, we have to be aware of. We can't avoid that elephant in the room. The second thing, our revenue for July, and July is one of the smallest months of revenue in the year, was off $4 million. I think that we also need to be very cognizant of where revenue is as this commission unfolds its work, especially if we're going to do something in the way that we did House Bill 1587 in 2022. The beauty of House Bill 1587 was that we put $42.9 million into an enhanced benefit for those Tier B folks in Group 2. There's no question of whether that funding, will be there to pay for that benefit. A future legislature can't send it down to the municipalities or the counties, and I think that that is vitally important in whatever we do, that it not be funded in the way that the House sent us the budget, which was an allocation of $25 million a year for 10 years. That's a recipe, in my opinion, for downshifting to the counties and municipalities. So I think we have to keep a very close eye on revenue, and I would echo what Senator Gray said in terms of the Senate. I think we want to solve this problem, but at the same time, we have to have something that is sustainable and affordable. And if you look back to, where we were in 2011, and I really appreciate some of the things that the Municipal Association has said about turning the corner finally 12 years later with, sustainability and rates that employers pay. And let's remember who employers are. Employers are generally, for municipalities, schools, and counties, are property taxpayers. So we've made significant progress. And so to me, and the spirit of this amendment is to make it hopefully a little bit more affordable, so that for those 1,824 people, we might be able to get the consensus going forward. And that's why I would hope that we would ask for it to be analyzed also.
Anyone have a comment?
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
So Senator Bradley, we've heard some suggestions about some other things to be looked at, and I guess the question would really be to you and the speaker is, before we, have some recommendation about how broad we're going to be looking at different things like the COLA or the multiplier for everybody. Do you and the speaker believe that the funding that you're looking at will be adequate to cover several asks? We've got two here, and then
For the consultant?
yeah.
Well, I think that, and maybe the folks in the retirement system can comment on this. I think that the funding necessary to analyze these things, because the second one is a subset of the first one,
Yeah.
should be relatively easy for the actuaries to be able to determine. And in fact, Mr. Carlin has told me that, I think based on Representative Goley's bill, which I used as a way of drafting the amendment, that some of this analysis has already been done. So
Yes,
I feel
there-
based,
There were a number of options analyzed as we dealt with House Bill 436 and with House Bill 2. And some of that information is available right now, so we don't need to repeat it.
Right, and the point I'm making is that that consultant line should be something that we can handle in our budgets for these two
Okay.
proposals. More than that, I think it depends on, how far we go and what we're asking for.
Well, yeah, if we go for a total rewrite of the retirement system, it will cost obviously a lot more than just changing this one page.
Yeah, I'm not, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not opposed to extending it a little bit, but I also question as to how far we're gonna go. I understood this commission to basically be try and find a problem for the 1,834 people. And I don't have a problem whatsoever in moving forward and looking at some other stuff. But, I think we have to be realistically careful as to how far that we want to go. But I think our primary goal ought to be is finding a fix for this particular issue.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator.
Maybe just for the ease of our work, that perhaps the speaker and the president could have some conversation before our meeting next week and just figure out, what they think what range and what things would be studied, and that because they're paying for it. So maybe that'd be, and then rather than us deciding as a commission now what we want looked at, maybe there could be a proposal they would bring in next week that would cover the things they want to cover.
That's fine. I think they could, I think any major rewrite is going to have to come in as a bill.
Yeah.
A separate bill. I mean, the commission itself may sponsor a bill for this one issue.
Yeah.
And probably will, but other people can, I'm sure there'll be other bills. I've heard from several people that there's a couple more in work right now. So we'll be dealing with those, and we'll get the analyses on those as the bill rather than as part of the commission. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Representative Wilhelm.
Thank you. I just want to point out, I think Group 2 is what prompted the commission and the disagreement between the House and the Senate on what to include in the budget. That's what prompted it, but ultimately we are looking at a larger scope. I think the charge of the commission, as outlined in HB 2, includes Group 1, Group 2, COLAs, the report of the Decennial Retirement Commission. There's a fair number of items on here, and so
Yeah.
I think just for us to look at all of that and make sure that we're addressing, yes, Group 2, but also looking at the entire retirement system as we work on this.
At least at a top level of what's important and how to tell if it's a worthwhile change. That's something that I think we can brainstorm without necessarily needing an actuarial analysis. Yes, we do have more than this one issue, even if it was the trigger. Okay. Any comments on this revision? Yes.
So the one thing I would say was inadvertent on my part on the disability issue that Senator Susi raised. So I think that when we ask the retirement system to ask GRS to look at that, that also should be included as a separate line item in the actuarial analysis. Does that make sense, Senator Susi?
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I just, a question, Madam Chair, would you have any idea how long, or maybe if somebody can answer, how long it would take to get this information that we're requesting? I know you work on this stuff all the time.
Since they've done similar things, I would say a couple of weeks would be my guess. We'll keep in touch and find out. I don't think it would be months.
Is there, any practical way that we could possibly lay out, an agenda for the, coming meetings? Maybe not the whole, until the end, but maybe every a couple weeks ahead of time, so that the members might be able to,
Mm-hmm.
look at what, what we got coming up, and, maybe do any analysis that they might have to do. I'm
I'll
not sure
have
if
to
that's
consult,
possible.
I'll have to consult with the retirement system on when they would expect to have the first analyses ready. Because I think that would be the first detailed meeting when we say, this is our some of our choices and they cost X, Y, and Z, and which ones do we want? But I'll try to get something out before next week. It's a good idea. Any other comments, questions, concerns? All right, then we have two plans of one changes the multiplier, one changes the multiplier and changes the groups for group 2 in the tiered area, and both would need disability. So should we send those off for an actuarial analysis? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will send those two plans off for an actuarial analysis. Our next meeting will be basically high level and looking at what other areas we should concentrate on and what criteria we should use for making changes. And so, does anyone else have anything that they want to bring up, mention, or ask about? Senator Gray?
I believe that the retirement system did do some calculations on a increase in the multiplier, at 20 years of service and 30 years of service. And I think they already have that. So I don't know if it was an official one or an off the record one, but if they have those records, that should also be supplied to
Yes.
the committee members.
Yes, I have, Marty Carden was saying that he has some of the analyses that were done last year, and I believe that was one of them that he will be able to present to the commission next week when he's back from vacation. He was still collecting them when he left. All right. Does anyone else have anything that they want to bring up? Concerns? Issues? Well, in that case, we are adjourned, and thank you all.